that we should pass this session. We should have passed the last session, session before, but we didn't, so we are where we are now. And I was the proud second co-sponsor on this bill after Senator Jake Oliveira. There are two versions, a House version and a Senate version of this bill, which is an act regarding free expression. So there are two versions, they're identical bills, but one was filed in the House by Representative Moran, and one was filed in the Senate by Senator Julian Cyr. It was a no-brainer for me to be a co-sponsor for a couple of reasons. The first is it's the right thing to do. The second is I think it reflects the vast majority opinion in our district, in the 10th Bristol District. And third, we've got some major advocates on the ground that have been reaching out and living this. So whether it's Francis and Matt, who've been living it on the Old Rochester Regional School Committee with the policy that they put in place for Old Rochester to deal with this issue, or Ann Richard, or Laura Gardner, or any of the other folks that have been in the trenches that work in library services that have expressed to me as their representative the importance of this bill moving. Because we know there'll be future attempts, there already are, in the Old Rochester Regional School District to try and ban books. And it's so important that we have the right policies and laws in place that protect the professionals that make these decisions, the people who actually went to school to learn the effective ways to be a librarian or a director of library services, our administrators, our school committees, our teachers. They're on the front line and they need protection from the threats that we see every day. And so this bill does a lot of that. Both the House and the Senate versions have been reported favorably out of the Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development. They're now in their respective Ways and Means committees. So Senate bill went to Senate Ways and Means, House bill went to House Ways and Means. That's a good step. That means it's out of committee. They didn't go to study. They're actually in the next step in the process, which is in the Ways and Means Committee, which then kind of decides what happens next. The leadership and the chairs of House and Senate Ways and Means decide next. In the House, there were more than one bill on this topic filed in this legislative session, so they combined them all into a single bill. So that's good. It means that the process is consolidating into specific bills, whichever vehicle it is, whether it's the Senate version or the House version, they're identical bills. They do a number of things. The most important thing that this bill does is it makes a very strong public statement of where the Commonwealth is on this topic. In the beginning of the bill, the General Court, the House and the Senate, make some pronouncements about the importance of freedom of expression and protecting those rights. It then goes on to set up a structure where each school district sets a policy on books and collections. And it creates a mechanism for if someone wants to object to books that are in the library, there's a process that you go through, but each school district has to follow the American Library Association standards, which is critical. It also indemnifies public officials, librarians, library directors, faculty, administrators, from what otherwise could be a threat to them professionally or otherwise. It creates that protection. And it also requires the Library Board of Commissioners to provide a report to the legislature annually on books being removed from school libraries. So this is something that is very relevant today. I'm proud that it's going through the process, but it is helpful for you to reach out to your legislators. Feel free to reach out to me as well. There are 200 legislators, 40 in the Senate, 160 in the House. The more that leadership hears, the committee chairs and members of leadership hear how important this is to all of you, the more that there is a focus on that legislation getting passed. So that's Bill 3594H 3594, which means that's the House version, and then S 2328, which is the Senate version. I'm co-sponsor on both of those. I will also say there are other bills that have been priorities for certainly an advocacy group of librarians that I've gladly co-sponsored. One is an act relative to school library standards. There does not exist statewide standards on school libraries. There is a bill that has been filed that would create a mechanism for school districts to adopt those standards. It wouldn't require them, but it would provide a framework for school districts to adopt. which I think is an important step in the right direction. So anyone who's worried about unfunded mandates, or that's not what this bill does. This bill creates a framework that school districts can use as standards for their library. And then the other one was an act addressing challenges facing public libraries and digital resource collections. And that's more of an access to digital materials. Right now, libraries can provide digital materials, but they only have a certain number of copies that they can share, and then they get charged thereafter. This would allow for more access for all of us to digital collections and not at the expense of libraries' dwindling budgets. So there's a lot this session on libraries. The most important one, of course, is why we're all here. And I am doing everything I can on behalf of the constituents in my district to move this forward. And so we all need to hear more from our constituents who want this bill passed. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Who's against this?
Is that a trick question?
Rochester.
So there are, you won't be surprised to learn that there are some very socially conservative members of the legislature, generally in the minority caucus and the Republican caucus, but there are some very conservative Democrats too. There aren't many. But I think this is supported by a vast majority of members of the legislature. So it's more a question of the bills actually going to the floor and being voted on. And we have a 2-year session, so any time between now and the end of next year is when bills like this could be taken up. So for example, if the Senate votes to adopt this, then it goes to the House. And then the House will at some point either take it up or not take it up, and that's the decision of leadership. It may get pulled into another bill. There may be a bigger bill on issues related to rights that it might get pulled into. So we're not sure yet. I don't know. I'm a freshman rep. So if I were in leadership, I could probably tell you more definitively if and when this comes up. But that's why it's important grassroots for people to hear from their constituents so that it's on folks' radar screens. But there are some members, it's a minority of people, I think, and if you just look at who's co-sponsored the bill, it gives you a pretty clear sense that a lot of different people support the freedom of expression bill. But there are members that just don't. There are members in the House that are continuously, as a matter of fact, at our last formal session last week, when we were taking up 2 very important bills. One was to reform DCF, the Department of Children and Family Services, and the other was to protect transit workers. The one on DCF, a colleague of mine tried to make an amendment, or proposed an amendment that would be very specifically defining what's appropriate in libraries and what's not. It failed. It failed primarily because it wasn't germane to what we were discussing. But that individual representative constantly, whether it's transgender right issues or freedom of expression issues, that one member is constantly trying to push something through. Won't happen, and even within his own caucus, there's not a lot of support, but there are people that fundamentally believe what they believe, and so they're going to oppose it.
Mark?
Yes.
I'm behind you.
Hi. Hi, Cindy.
And I apologize if I missed this, but where does the Senate stand on the Senate version?
Yeah, so both the House and Senate versions were voted favorably out of the Joint Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development, which means most of our major committees have senators and representatives both sitting on the committee. And so if the Senate version is voted out of that joint committee, that means the senators voted on it, and they did. They voted, it was reported favorably out of that committee, the Senate bill. The House members also voted favorably, so both been reported out favorably out of that committee, and they both sit in their respective positions.
Okay, so my next question is, who is the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and are there any local senators that are also on that committee that we should be in touch with?
Yes, so the Senate Chair of Ways and Means is Mike Rodrigues, who represents Rochester.
I thought
He does not represent, so, and maybe that's helpful too. So if you're from Rochester, Mike Rodriguez, who is a great partner of mine on a lot of different things, he represents Rochester. So he's the senator for the town of Rochester, and he's the Senate Chair of Ways and Means. If you live in Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, or Acushnet, or New Bedford, Senator Mark Montigny is your senator. I don't think he's on Ways and Means, but we can check.
I don't think he is either.
And if you're from Marion, Senator Kelly Dooner is your senator. I actually don't know what her position is on this bill, but she is your senator, so you can reach out to them. If you're from the 10th Bristol District, your rep is me. If you're not from the 10th Bristol District, I can happily tell you who your represent. So Acushnet is split. So if you're in one part of Acushnet, I'm your rep. If you're in the other part, it's Representative Steve Willett, who I believe also supports this bill as well. He may or may not be a co-sponsor. And just because someone's not a co-sponsor on a bill does not mean they don't support it. So, don't assume that if you don't see your legislator, senator, or rep on a bill that they are opposed to the bill, because that's not what that means at all. It just means some of us, when you co-sponsor, you feel strongly in favor of something. So that's what that usually means.
Thanks.
You had a question?
You said there were two versions, one for the House and one for the Senate.
Yes.
If this is approved in the Senate and then goes to the House, will those two get combined?
Could be. Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes they all get combined into one. Sometimes if there's a bill passed in the House and a bill passed, the House may pass its own version, and then you go to conference. And then if there are differences, if there are no differences, then it moves through the legislative process, and sometimes they get combined together. So I actually think the fact that both were reported out favorably, both are now in Ways and Means, as opposed to going to second reading and then third reading, they go straight to Ways and Means. That is a good indicator that there is broad-based support for those bills. The only question is, do they fall into the list of priorities that leadership feels are important for us to vote on?
And is that why this has taken 2 years plus, because leadership hasn't seen it as a priority?
So,
or just taken longer to committees?
So there are 8,000 bills that were filed in January of this year, and that doesn't include late files, which means we can, first 2 weeks, especially when you're a new rep, you get sworn in and then it's okay, you get 2 weeks to file legislation. But that's the process, right? And you file your bills, and you can do it name only, and then the clerk will work with you on language. After that deadline, if you file any bills after then, that's called a late file bill, and it automatically goes to the Rules Committee. And it sits there, it may never come out. So this was filed timely, these bills were filed timely. And I guess, because I'm new to this, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can, is that there are a lot of things budget is a big focus of the legislature in the first several months, and so the budget was delivered on time. We have a formal coming up this Wednesday, the House does, and the Senate usually has one on a Thursday. We don't necessarily know what's coming up until a few days before, and that's based on what literally the Speaker and the Senate President decide are important for us to be voting on. So I don't know if and when these will move out of Ways and Means, but I'll keep pushing on my end. I mean, we're very much focused right now on utility costs, the high cost of utilities. That's something that I'm anxious for us to get out soon, so people see that we're working on something that affects everybody in this room and all of our neighbors. So this may not be, I mean, you would think, you can walk and chew gum and you can vote on 12 things at once. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I'll do everything I can as one member of the legislature to keep pushing to make sure this happens.
Is it okay if I jump in and share something that I know
Sure.
from our side?
Sure.
So one thing that I want to mention is that our coalition is actually working to get, we have redlined the bill, we're working to get a few enhancements to the bill, so that could lead to what Mark was talking about, where some of the language might change from the Senate to the House version. Yeah. For example, one of the things that we think is really important is that if you want to challenge a book in a school library, you need to have a kid in that school, for example. Yes, all these people know why I'm saying this. We've had so many people at our school committee meetings waving books and screaming and yelling who don't even have kids in the school. So we feel it's important that that should be in the bill, for example.
Yes.
We feel it's important.
Yes.
Thank you. We feel it's important that the bill should offer protections for creators, the people who make the books whose livelihoods are being harmed by these actions because our books don't sell. My books haven't been challenged. I'm not one of those people. I'm an ally. I'm here as an ally. But lots of my peers have had books challenged. So those are things that might create what you were discussing, where the Senator Cyr was hoping to move it out of Ways and Means like soon. That's what he's hoping.
And they may.
And if that happens to move out of Ways and Means with the Senate soon, then the House will have to consider that language that we're asking for changes in. And so a letter was sent to the House, Ways and Means, this week from us. The Senate already has it. Now it went to House, because it went to the House Ways and Means after the Senate Ways and Means.
So both of them, the House bills went to House Ways and Means, Senate bill is in the Senate.
Right.
Ways and Means.
Right.
So if the Senate votes the Senate bill out, then it goes to House Ways and Means. And to your point, Michelle, I mean, I think there are a number of things, and if I can brag on Matt and Francis for a minute, the policy that they put in place in Old Rochester, and one additional provision I would love to see, but I also don't want, I don't want this to get stumbled and cut into a million pieces, is in Old Rochester, you can't just keep doing this over and over. There's a period of time once a decision has been made by the school committee where you can't make that attempt a second time. Is it 2 years? 3 years. And that is a great mechanism to kind of slow people down from just trying to constantly go at it over and over again. And I'd love to see that provision. But maybe that's the other reason why we all feel so strongly about it, is because this area in the 10th Bristol District was ground zero for book banning. This is where it all kind of started, and the Old Rochester Regional School Committee did it the right way, saying we're not gonna not allow you to have this conversation or even make these requests. We're just gonna have a thoughtful process in place, and we're not going to have a process where you can just constantly, with the same books. I mean, they can keep coming back with other book banning requests. So it is, Old Rochester is a really good example of a policy that would work in other parts of the state. Other questions, comments?
Do you know what Montague feels about it? I'm assuming he supports it, but.
Yeah, I don't. Let me look at the Senate bill. I would presume he would be supportive. Like, I presume most legislators are supportive of this.
So we can send him a postcard.
Yes, I can.
I definitely would.
Yeah, let me see
I think I did too.
who the co-sponsors are.
While you're looking that up, I'll just add to Susan's question too. When we gave testimony in July is when we gave testimony to the tourism board. It was hours worth of testimony, hours worth, and in that time, only 4 people spoke against it. From all the people speaking, there were citizens coming in. There were a bunch of legislators who came and spoke. Ayanna Presley had a person come and speak in support of the bill. Lots of people spoke in support, and there were 4 against it. And one of them was from an organization that was very well organized and had the talking points. The others, I would say, were a little more, I don't know how to explain it, but like
Concerned citizens.
Yes, but they were using like really inflammatory language and not talking to the issue and kind of rambly, still speaking their point, but there were only 4 against it on that day. I don't know how many in total, but the room was packed, standing room only, and it was only 4 against, and one against was on Zoom, the rest were in the room. So.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, as I look through, at least on I'll pull up the House version too to see who the co-sponsors are. But just to give you a sense, there are Republicans. The minority leader in the Senate, Bruce Tarr, who's from Gloucester, is a co-sponsor of this bill. Senator Patrick O'Connor from Weymouth, who's also in the Republican caucus in the Senate, is also a co-sponsor, as is Senator Ryan Fatman. So 3 of the 5 Republicans in the Senate are co-sponsors. I just want you to know, because I did text Senator Rodrigues, because I have a very good working relationship with him. He said he's completely in favor of it, and that they're hoping to tee the bill up for consideration very soon in the Senate. So that's good stuff. And but let me just give you a sense of who it is in the House. But that just gives you a sense of, if there are Republicans, especially Republicans in leadership, that are co-sponsoring this, then you ask yourself the question, well, why isn't it voted out today? But it's, I can't completely answer that. So just give it one second. Okay, here we go. So in the House version, that's John Moran's version of it. Yeah, it's a long.
It's a big list, yeah.
It's a long list. Dave Vieira, who is a former college buddy of mine, he's a Republican from Mashpee and Falmouth. He's a co-sponsor. And then a majority of my fellow freshman classmates, and then some committee chairs. So it's got quite a list of co-sponsors. But you heard it from Senator Rodrick that he's also very much in favor of the bill and hopes to see it move out of the Senate soon. So it's a good update to share with you all.
That's great.
That's why I was looking at my phone earlier, because I texted him and I just didn't want to miss a message from him.
Thank you, Mark.
So,
Thank you so
all
much.
right,
Thank you for your work.
If you have any other questions, 'cause I know we're talking about this, but you have your rep here, so if there's anything else on your mind, it might be dangerous for me to say that, but I'm here for a little while, so thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your approachability too. You're
Sure.
always around, and I mean so much. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
You're always available to us.
Thank you, thanks. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.